Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling Right Wing Hobbesians, including cops, delight in sadistic beating of black/brown/othered, in quotation marks, suspects. So, this is a bookend to the last episode I did about Rousseauvians and the left wing and their blind spot for sociopathy, and that occurs at all levels of society, not just among elites, and that leads to a faulty politics and policy set to reform our broken criminal justice system and public safety system more generally. And so in this episode, though, I am talking about the opposite. I'm filling out the picture of the last few episodes about sociopathy, and I'm talking about the celebration of violence and of brutality by the right wing, and that celebration, which is part of the lifeblood of the politics of the right wing. It's part of their, for instance, the success of Donald Trump is that he presents himself as this sadistic bully, and that the sadistic bully is the person who you need to lead the country, the person you need on the beat as a cop, so forth and so on, the person you need to lead cities, the person you need so forth and so on. You need sadistic bullies who bully other people, who with almost no provocation, or even go out of their way without any provocation at all to confine, to find, and to beat othered people who are black and brown often, or people who are political opponents, people who are considered quote unquote leftists, people who have high social ideals and are, for instance, climate protesters, people who are, or other kinds of protesters who are considered to be suspect and are threatening to this sort of right wing reactionary grouping in our society, perhaps a population of maybe 15% of the country who live in fear of others, and who are have a politics that supports a paranoid vision of society, and of striking first, of lashing out first, and anticipating aggression from others, or projecting one's own aggression outward onto others. And the thing that soothes these people, or that makes them feel comfortable, is seeing supposed leaders, or wannabe leaders, or people who they think of them, they think who are their leaders, like Trump mostly. And Trump's success is in part due to this sadistic bully role. And I'm calling this Hobbesian. So there's a Hobbesian. Now, I don't want to, weigh down Thomas Hobbes, the actual political philosopher, with this idea. I'm talking about a distortion, in a way, of Hobbes, and I'm using him as a counterpoint to Rousseau, as the other pole in our politics, that the belief is that hierarchy, the domination, and that some of this is from Hobbes, but anyway, hierarchy and domination is what keeps us from really descending into chaos, into a civilization, a collapse of civilization. That you need hierarchy, you need an authority, a sovereign, to assert their authority preemptively, in a way, or at least I'm not necessarily quoting Hobbes, but that requires an initial move, in a way, to assert domination and power. And so this group believes that all social ills, all social, uh, uh, you know, everything that bothers them. So social ills is a fancy way to put anything that bothers them. They're emotionalistic people, so the word social ills is a nice way to put some of the right wing base and also some of the politicians actually how they think. They think in terms of basically lashing out and oppressing and bullying and using brutality to confine or to kill or to seriously injure and quote unquote punish the people who they think need punishing or they think who need putting down and need putting down in their place. Okay, so this is there's this hierarchical vision. They consider themselves to be on top of the hierarchy, or they identify with those people who they believe to be on top of the hierarchy and who are the ultimate in this bully sadist person. So anyway, so unfortunately this attitude has extended to our police department. So many police, not all police, but many police are trained to A, to live in fear, and B, to and some of that fear is justified. There's some real we have a heavily armed society. There is too many guns in our society. So in order to reform our criminal justice system, we need to reform guns. They need to happen at the same time, or the gun reform needs to happen almost before the criminal justice system reform, or they at least in tandem, if not before, because there are real bases for the cops feeling under threat. And I'm not saying that in countries that have the gun control under control, or they have guns under control, that there isn't also this issue of police brutality and this idea, this mentality of using domination rather than a broad spectrum of different approaches to wrongdoing, to sociopathy in more general terms, to the people who injure other people on a ongoing basis, not just sort of on a one-off basis, and then they realize that they've done something wrong, or they try to, maybe it goes to civil court, or maybe they get a criminal sentence or a criminal conviction and so forth and so on, but it's a one-time thing, and then they are rehabilitated or they serve their time and they don't re-offend. But anyway, there are people who multiply offend. There are people, that's the people who are more likely to be considered sociopaths, or who have a sociopathic tendencies. Not necessarily, it's not always the case, but many times that is, or that certainly looks from the outside like a habitual problem of offending, and so therefore there needs to be some redress and ways to stop that and contain that. And so, but the Hobbesian always sees brutality and overreaction as being the best, attitude. And so, as I was saying in the last episode, the left Rousseauvians need to integrate some aspects of containment, of some aspects of a hierarchical or confinement relationship to those people who are habitual offenders, who are this 1-2% of the population, and there's actually less than that, but there's a group of people who are going to be habitual offenders, and there needs to be a special programs for dealing with that. And we can look at other societies like the Scandinavian societies for their approaches to rehabilitate people who have a tendency to who don't have a strong internal sense of right and wrong, and they therefore are more likely to offend again. And so anyway, but the Hobbesian, the right-wing Hobbesian, or the extreme Hobbesian approach, just as I was saying, the problem is not Rousseauvianism altogether, but it's extreme Rousseauvianism, or it's radical Rousseauvianism, just also radical Hobbesians, which we have concentrated as a political force in our society, and they're also among some of the more powerful people in police departments and in the military to some degree. And these people are have a religion of force and a religion of domination. They do not see the boundaries to which their tools that they have, the tools of force. They have the boundaries that where they can be judiciously applied to a problem, just as in international relations, the force needs to be applied judiciously under the auspices of a program of diplomacy, a program of outreach, a program of cooperation between nations. Similarly, it's an analogous problem in our criminal justice system, the application of force in a judicious way that is, and confinement and so forth and so on, that that is under the control of an authority that has a Rousseauvian approach, a Rousseauvian default, okay, but then a Hobbesian capability and an understanding of where the Hobbesianism can work and where it needs to work, and where it also has its limits. And so in the United States, though, we have tended to, because of our worship of guns, our worship of military might, and so forth and so on, we have tended to, and also our media, our films, our TV and Hollywood movies have been celebrations of using force and brutality to get supposedly socially beneficial outcomes. And so that we see this, for instance, as a Rorschach test, this latest, this riot that happened in Union Square in New York City, where you have people who are looking at that from the right-wing perspective and saying, the cops were right to overreact and so forth and so on. On the other hand, there are people who are on the ground who say, look, the cops overreacted. This was not, they made it worse by doing what they did. So, but it becomes, in the world of the Hobbesian, it becomes a celebration. And so, and there's also unfortunate and laughable in a way, self-esteem issues that the Hobbesians are trying to work out by saying, look, it's great that kid got hurt, so forth and so on, by the cops. That shows that our superiority to him, we are better than him, and that reinforces, in their opinion, their superiority, that their representative in their mind, the Hobbesian, the person who uses brutality, who uses what I'm calling sadistic force. And I think there's an element, I feel pretty confident to say there's an element of joy for some of these people who are so ready to apply force in the police department, and also the people who are celebrating that, even more so the people who are celebrating. I'm not even... The cops themselves, could have a bunch of different motivations, including fear and so forth and so on, and bad leadership in their ranks. But that the people who are celebrating on Fox News and on OAN and on all the right-wing stations in the United States, but also even the local news, looky-loos, who are looking at all the crime and so forth and so on, and look at all these. The implication is, look at these quote unquote animals. Okay, they don't use the word animals on the local news, but that's what Donald Trump has used in the past and so forth and so on. And he's just speaking. He's speaking. That's why he's so popular with this 15-20% of the population, is that he is saying he is releasing them from their he's giving them permission to speak what they think about these other people who they think of themselves as superior to, largely for racial reasons, but also some of it for socioeconomic reasons. They are probably better off, and in terms of they have more social privilege, and they're more social. They haven't had nearly as hard a life, or hard as some. I'm not saying all, but as some of the people who they celebrate being, beaten or being confined or whatever it is, or thrown in jail and so forth and so on. So anyway, this is an ongoing theme that has been around for a long time, and I think that we can overcome it by looking at it as this, what I'm calling a meta social theory or meta political orientation, which I'm calling Hobbesianism, and the other one being Rousseauvianism, that I think that people can recognize that it does have its place. There are places where, having a hierarchical or a use of using force to get a certain end is critical for that end to be achieved, because someone is, for instance, has intent to hurt other people, or that they have a habitual pattern of hurting other people. They need to be confined. They may be armed too, so forth and so on. They may have prepared themselves to harm other people. It's not just an accident, and so by having weapons, so there needs to be a force that deals with that in our society. And anyway, and so this is not a revolutionary, or let's say revolutionary is the wrong word, but it shouldn't be news to people who are looking at the reality. But we do have, again, in our society, on the left, people who think of a utopia of not having this problem. And in fact, it's not, I don't think there's been a society where there hasn't been this problem of sociopathy and of dealing with sociopathy on all levels of society, and dealing with various levels of crime and so forth and so on. So there are societies that have much, much less of it and much more of it. And we can create a society. We need to create a society that has much, much less of it. And that's part of why I think the left has so much to offer. That's why in the last episode I said that it's blind spots of the left are our common peril. That the solutions are more on that side than on the side of Hobbesianism. But to just dismiss the Hobbesian approach to certain social problems and certain events in society is also wrong. Okay, so the radical position on both of those poles of what I'm calling the meta politics of the left-right confrontation is the radical positions on both sides are absolutely untenable, or will create cruelty, or just basically not work. Okay, are unlikely to work, or unlikely to achieve power, and therefore be able to realize real social good through policy changes in policy, so forth and so on. But anyway, or if they do achieve power, I'm thinking more about the Hobbesians, that basically the fascism is the radical Hobbesian position. Okay, that is one of the radical Hobbesian positions, depending on the age, the time, the historical time we're talking about, and the positioning of the society that we're talking about, so forth and so on. But anyway, so this is just a quickish, bookend to the other videos I've done in this series. In any case, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Please, we might be able to have a discussion there. Please like the video if you got something out of it. And also, please subscribe to Politics 2100 to get more content, to also get notice of future episodes. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode.